Hello, everyone. My name is Palm or Palmtacular, and I am a VTuber, but I am also a law student. I don't make very many YouTube videos, so please forgive me if this is like really awkward or impromptu. Um, I don't really know how to edit very well, so but I really wanted to make a video to talk to you guys today about the tough situation that's been happening online with online adult entertainment and just online adult spaces in general. I know that everything has been really hard, and I wanted to take a moment to say to take care of yourselves, and take a break, touch some grass, in a nice way. Take a shower, you know? Um, do some self-care. Put on a face mask. Do something to make yourself happy. That's the most important thing. Because taking care of yourself and self-care is an act of rebellion in and of itself. That being said, I have created a call and email campaign to help people reach out to their legislators or representatives to ask them to pay attention to what's going on. And you can find that link down my Twitter or on the big campaign card website that's been shared around on Blue Sky. That being said, I wanted to make this video to talk about the Senate Bill 1748 or 1748 titled the Kids Online Safety Act. And I also wanted to talk about my plans to continue online adult entertainment support work. The first thing I'll say is that I'm finalizing my paper about financial censorship and financial discrimination in the space with my professor, and will be submitting the final draft on August 10th. I'm very excited to submit that draft. The paper in its current state is about 30 pages long, so I'm going to try to condense it down to a few pages to make it more readable for everyone. Because my goal is to bring information to everyone in a more accessible and digestible way without losing tons of important stuff, if that makes sense. I've also rather started a blog kind of through Patreon. I've created a free membership where people can sign up for the membership and see my updates to get up to date on what I'm working on, what I'm doing, that sort of thing. Because I understand that my Twitter is kind of a mess right now, and I want people to have an easier way to get access to my work. That being said, the work that I do right now is unpaid as it's for school or a side project. Um, I work on this on the weekends and then write my paper and also work at my school's clinic for Asylum. So, if you do like the work that I'm doing and want to help me pay for the bar or pay for snacks or feed my cat, you could go to Ko-Fi and donate there. I really appreciate everyone that's helped me on this journey so far and hope that I can continue to support you all however I can. I also want to note that this video is not legal advice. It does not replace getting legal advice. It's my analysis of the bill in its current state at 11:54 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, July 29th, 2025. Please get legal advice from a lawyer in your jurisdiction if you need legal advice. I want to say that I'm only really going to be talking about this bill, the Kids Online Safety Act. Um, but but if you want me to talk about other bills or other situations happening, I'd be more than happy to. You can leave a comment down below, and I'd love to get to them when I have time. That being said, I know that everyone's been really stressed out, especially with the UK situation, and I want to point out a very important distinction between the UK's bill and the US's supposed act or proposed act. First, the UK bill has passed, and it's passed since 2023. This bill in the United States, or this act, is a proposed act, meaning that it hasn't passed even the Senate yet. Um, it's only been shown to the Senate. So that means it's not in law currently as we speak. I also want to say that the US's act itself does not impose any kind of criminal liabilities on the platforms. So that means that the only liability or the only way that platforms can be held accountable for the stuff that's listed in the act is stuff that's about like, or rather, it's money, monetary damages, um, restitution, as well as other like compensatory damages. And the FTC, or the Federal Trade Commission, is allowed to make certain considerations if platforms don't follow the act, but it's not like the UK. Although I will say I am not an expert on the UK and UK laws or anything like that. So I will say that you know, what I could be saying could be wrong. So please take everything that I say with a grain of salt, even for US laws. Um There is currently in the UK's laws criminal action that can be taken against senior managers who fail to ensure companies follow requests and things like that, but there is no such thing currently listed in the US's act. Mm. So more about this KOSA, which we call it the Kids Online Safety Act. It was introduced, or I guess reintroduced, in a new iteration in early May of 2025, but it hasn't made much progress since. Um, I'm not going to be going through the entire act because it's kind of long, but I can do a read through if you'd like. But you can also access the act itself online. That being said, I picked out some main provisions that I thought were important to the act, but I do really suggest going online and at least reading some of it. So the first one is that the safeguards and tools that are presented for this act only apply to individuals under the age of 13. That means that individuals that are 12 years old, 364 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds years old. So this won't apply to like teenagers above or 13 and up. The second part is that it aims to protect minors from very, very specific stuff. It does not include any kind of adult entertainment or anything like that. And instead, the stuff that is included in this duty of care section in the Act is the enumerated stuff or the listed out stuff, right? That being said, I would like to explain what a duty of care is first. A duty of care is a legal term that essentially means a responsibility, legally, that someone has to someone else. A duty of care can either be an implied duty of care, which is implied through different actions, or, like in this case, created by legislation or courts. The duty of care in this case applies to platforms, and it says that platforms are not allowed, or rather, they have to take care when they're creating and designing their platform features to try and prevent and mitigate the following harms, which means that the legislature is trying to limit the amount of harms that platforms are responsible for. And it has to be where it's reasonably foreseeable. So the type of harms that are listed are things like eating disorders, substance use disorders, and suicidal behavior, depressive disorders, and anxiety disorders when such conditions have objectively verifiable and clinically diagnosable symptoms, and are also related to compulsive usage of a social media platform, patterns of use that indicate compulsive usage of social media platforms, physical violence or online harassment activity that is so severe, pervasive, or objectively offensive that it impacts a major life activity of a minor, so think like scares a minor from going to school, sexual exploitation and abuse of minors, which includes but doesn't limit to like sexual coercion of minors, which is to say grooming, distribution, sale, or use of narcotic drugs, tobacco products, cannabis products, gambling, or alcohol. Again, this is towards minors, so people under 13, and financial harms that are caused by unfair or deceptive acts or practices that are then defined under the Federal Trade Commission Act. that being said, it doesn't broadly extend to like all activities on the internet. Um, it's also aimed at reducing compulsive use of platforms, which is to say, um, use that interferes with a minor's life or ability to enjoy life, including their ability to sleep or eat or do stuff like that. So, number three, it requires the platforms to also present safeguards, including protecting known minor accounts from being messaged or communicated to by non minor accounts. It doesn't mean that adults won't be able to see the accounts, like if on League of Legends, for example, though I do think their age of use is higher than 13. If there is a minor identified account, right? Um, then we'll still be able to see adult accounts, rather we'll still be able to see that minor's account when they're playing the game, but they won't be able to direct message the minor, stuff like that. um it also gives minors a chance to opt out of personalized recommendations. I'd also like to note that these changes are changes that minors themselves can add to their own accounts. And additionally, these are also safeguards that parents can put into minor accounts as well. So number four, this gives tools to parents that they can easily use, and the language of the actual act is readily accessible and easy to use safeguards to protect their minor children from different things on platforms. And those different things are covered in that list that I said before. It doesn't include, though, if minors are specifically looking for content, right? Like they're specifically seeking out the harmful content, or if they're accessing resources and information about prevention or mitigation of harms. So, if a minor is doing some research on like suicide prevention, doesn't mean that the minor won't be able to see that. Nor does it mean that stuff like the suicide hotline will be banned from minors being able to see. In other parts, it also gives the FTC or allows the FTC general guidance on what policies can or cannot be enacted. The guidance, I would like to make clear to you all, is not lawmaking and cannot be used in a lawsuit against a platform. So let's say for whatever reason that the FTC makes a guideline that platforms can't use the color purple in their UI because it's inaccessible to people. Just a silly example, I'm sorry. But in that situation, if Twitch doesn't want to comply because their platform color is purple, then that's okay. That's just a guidance. What Twitch can't allow is things like distribution, sale, or use of narcotic drugs, tobacco products, cannabis products, gambling, or alcohol being targeted at minors. This act also starts to formulate different advertisement recommendations for minors with clearer guidance rather on what is specifically advertising, what can classify as advertising, and what advertising has to classify itself, how it has to identify itself when it's in content that is being targeted at minors. They also have to, advertisers have to explain why they're targeting minors with their content. I also want to talk about a little bit of the misinformation that's been going around. Some people have said online that it requires compulsory disclosure of identification on websites, and that's just squarely not true. As it stands, websites can actually ask for your ID to verify your age, but they don't have to, and this act doesn't require them to. It actually specifically says it doesn't require them to. Underneath this section that talks specifically about the kind of things that the act doesn't require, right? Within the age verification, the act itself states that it does not require ID verification for different users. Um, and it doesn't require any kind of ID guarding as well, so you don't have to put in any kind of ID information. Mhm. The act itself also has a lot of information about algorithms and things like that, and quite honestly, I don't know much about algorithms, so I don't really feel all that comfortable presenting that kind of information to you all. But if you'd like me to look at that information, I totally can. Oh, as far as the protections for privacy, if you go to Section 112 of the Act, and its rules of construction and other matters regarding the Act, if you go to C1 and 2, under C1 and 2, it says that the that the act doesn't require collection of personal data that isn't in the normal course of business of users, nor does it require the platforms to implement age gating or age verification functionality, which includes ID verification. Additionally, I want to go back to the point that other websites already verify your age. Things like OnlyFans that house adult content do already require a form of age verification for users and for creators. So this is already a system that we're seeing in place. I know that it's a little scary, but like the T situation happened recently with the data spill, but this is something that platforms are going to have to mitigate. I'm not going to get too far into ID verification and how I feel about it. I'm not a big fan of it in its current state because it does negatively impact a lot of people. But I can talk more about it in another video on Free Speech Coalition versus Paxson, the recent Supreme Court decision, if you guys would like. There's some more concerns about the act that it's too vague. Unfortunately, in the US legal system, the acts have to be vague enough to be able to cover as many situations as possible when they're litigated or brought to court. That being said, I understand, again, the concerns with vagueness and how platforms will take it. And that's why government agencies like the FTC create guidelines to try and clarify for the platforms. Additionally, I do want to mention that I really do like that this act creates a council to look at the harms against children. I think it's really helpful. And this council is really interesting because it includes a bunch of different people, including people that are actual industry representatives from the platforms. It includes parents that have knowledge about kids' online safety. It includes educators that have knowledge about kids' online safety, experts in mental health, and that sort of thing. And they'll be creating a report that will then talk about kids' online safety and what can be best done to protect children. So I do really like that part of the act. There's some more concerns about ID verification and how to verify if you are an adult or if you aren't. I can't pretend to know how ID verification works currently on platforms, but the FTC, or Federal Trade Commission, has recently stated that they do rely a lot on self-reporting, like when you put your birthday onto a website, and it'll be something that the FTC will have to look at. Because as it stands, I just don't think there is a great way currently for platforms to verify that someone is an adult. As far as the free speech restrictions on adults, there could be some issues with free speech, but as the act currently stands, the parents and minors themselves have the choice to whether or not to use the safeguards that are presented or to not use them. It's not compulsory. The only thing that is compulsory or is required currently is that the platforms offer the safeguards. There is some concerns about the abuse of systems by parents or children, and so the act again does require the FTC to do a study on these age verification systems, best practices, and it additionally requires the platforms themselves to publish reports on how this is going so that it can be changed and altered to best fit the platforms And these reports have to also be verified with an independent third party audit. So they have to look at what the third party sees and what they report. Mhm. Again, this is a super fast and dirty overview, but if you guys want a more in-depth overview, I can talk about this again. Um, Platform flexibility is another issue where um where people are afraid that platforms will just completely censor all users, but I just don't think that would be financially stable decision, especially seeing what's been happening with the UK and all of the user uncertainty there. um I also think that the act itself and the creation of the council that includes representatives from platforms will be super helpful to creating policies. I can say though right now that platforms are being pretty abusive of their reach. YouTube, for example, is allowing adult content in the form of inappropriate comics and nude cleaning videos, which is really not okay. And there has to be a way to hold these platforms responsible when they know that there are minors accessing the content. Adult entertainers don't want their content accessed by minors, and nor do we want minors to have access to content like nude cleaning videos on YouTube, which is used by minors. There are some concerns about abuses of the platforms that will repress adult content itself on platforms, right? The certain content might be inaccessible to minors, but the content that should be repressed by the platforms and mitigated against by their harms is enumerated in the act itself. All the issues that I talked about before. And yes, parents will have the option within this act to potentially exclude certain topics from personalized recommendation systems, including stuff like queer topics and stuff like that. But we're going to have to look at this on a case by case basis. It's really hard to determine right now how this act will play out. Am I in support of this act? I honestly don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball to see into the future where it was enacted and what would happen, but as it stands, there are parts I really like and parts I really don't like. I personally don't think that kids under 13 should have access to the free internet. There are situations that are incredibly dangerous for minors on the internet, and I know because I unfortunately was groomed as a minor and had free access to the internet where adults could contact me when I was at such a vulnerable age. I do think it's a responsibility of parents to protect their children, and I think it's a responsibility of other adults to not groom children either. But that being said, even when we say that it's adults' responsibility to keep kids safe, they haven't been. And so I think it's appropriate sometimes for legislation to enter to create avenues for parents or rather for parents, yes, to have tools to safeguard their children better against these platforms that are harming children. I think that parent-based restrictions can be really helpful, like Wizard 101 requiring parent passwords for minor accounts. But I think that an act like this will depend on what state you live in and what parents themselves choose to allow their kids access to or not. I hesitate to say that I'm in support or against this act because it, unlike ID verification laws or financial censorship, or even the overreaction in the UK by imposing criminal liabilities, um, is addressing a real issue on the internet about minors being targeted by adults, whether it's through advertising of gambling or grooming or even harassment campaigns. In any case, it's a really complicated topic, and it's hard to know what issues will come up without having the bill be in effect at all. That being said, I wanted to make this video to dispel some of the rumors that I heard about after I read this bill. No, it doesn't require compulsory ID verification, nor should it touch adult content because it only applies to minors. to people under 13. No, it's not perfect, but I think it is a step in the right direction to at least research the harms against minors and to try and start to find potential solution to these harms. I personally am a big fan of device-based age verification tokens that are essentially, and now this is an oversimplification, are little lines of code that tell a website whether or not a user is a minor. And no, that doesn't prevent the minor from getting access to their parents' computer or someone else's computer in some other place. But it does start to mitigate some of the active harms against minors. Um, that being said, that was a lot. So if you have any questions or want any clarifications, feel free to comment down below or reach out to me on Discord. It's just Pomtacular. Um, don't spam my Discord. But feel free to ask me any clarifying questions. I do hope this video made sense and can help dispel some of the fears, at least, that have been happening and been spread online. I'm still in classes right now, so I will try my best to reach out to everyone that does comment or comment back. But I also have to take care of myself and my grades. That being said, thank you so much for listening to my rambles, and I hope to see you all real soon. Bye bye!